Okay, great. Excellent. So the pie chart isn't exactly done scientifically. It's just kind of general, but these are kind of the big categories that I thought of. And of course, if anyone has anything that I didn't think of, we will definitely add it. So the biggest expense of your expedition is going to be the cruise cost itself. So I have a question, and I do have the chat up now. What do you think it most influences the cruise cost? Throw it in the chat and see what you think. Cabin category, as someone said. Dates, type of ships, excursion, solo travel, level of services, luxury. Yep, all of those things. Size of ship. There's one thing that definitely influences the cost that someone hasn't said, but it's not as obvious. Staff. Thank you, Anne. Kind of the staff and the experience of the operator. So how many people are on your expedition team, the ratio of expedition team to passengers, the ratio of the crew to passengers, and the experience of the operator and the staff. That definitely influences. Also, a couple other things included extras like hotel nights or charter flights, alcohol, gratuities, different things that are included. So it definitely isn't something that you can always compare apples to apples. So if you have a $15,000 cruise from one operator and a $15,000 cruise from another operator, those prices aren't necessarily comparing two equal products. And that can make it even that much more confusing to weed through why, what you're getting and why it's different. And if the more expensive one, let's say, is worth, and I say worth more, because I do put a premium on education activities, staff, experience, and then, of course, if you're a solo traveler, level of luxury, cabin class, someone did say, and the included amenities, whether they be adventure activities or other types of activities that are included. What about booking in advance versus booking at the last minute? What do people think about that? How's that going to impact your cruise cost? You didn't know this was going to be interactive. Pop it in the chat. What do you think? What's going to be the best time to book, do you think? Someone said booking in advance might be less expensive. Someone said if special deals, you could save some money. Jen saying both. Last minute can be cheaper, but so can advanced booking. And advanced booking, you can get all your activities. Excellent point. Excellent, excellent point. It was a little bit of a trick question because a lot of people think that last minute booking is always the way to save money. But those of you who said advanced booking, it is true. You can often save a lot of money with advanced booking. They do early bird specials. And as Jen said, if you have any specific activities that you must do, they fill up quickly. And so say you want to do like an immersion kayaking program, those generally have limited spots. Actually, most of the kayaking, paddling, stand-up paddleboarding programs have limited spots. And so those are going to book up in advance. Camping, book up in advance. So in those cases, if you have very specific needs, you're going to want to book in advance. And nowadays, with the way that the industry has grown, there's a lot more discounting earlier. There are more berths right now than there are interested people. And so you are seeing, especially with some operators, some very deep discounts. Now, the more experienced operators aren't always offering the deepest discounts because they aren't having trouble filling, I will say. They aren't having as much challenge filling their berths. But yes, the last minute deals also tend to be on more of the shoulder seasons. So if you want to travel more at the height of the season, sometimes an early bird booking will be better for you. And then there are these sort of weird things that happen. There's currently one that's happened on one of the cruises that I am working on this season. It goes to South Georgia, where there's a group that has booked a block of rooms and then they cancel, or a charter that has booked a whole ship and then they cancel at the very last minute. And then those are much deeper discounts than you'll ever get. Right now, that particular cruise that I'm working on, they're offering a 30% off special, which is pretty much unheard of at the height. This is the December, January South Georgia trip. It's the height of the season. So very, very rare. If you are interested in that, we can talk about that. All right, moving on, flight cost. Okay, so that is going to be the next largest piece of the pie for many of you, especially if you live very far away, because it can mean multiple flights with multiple airlines. Internally, you're likely going to have a flight to South America and then a separate flight to either Punta Arenas or Ushuaia. And I know in the US, it's very popular to play kind of the travel hacking game with credit card points. So if you are from the US, I don't know how it works in other countries, but you can sometimes offset part of that cost with a credit card. But it is nice on credit cards. You can also get a portion of your travel insurance covered with your credit card. Which brings me to the next one, which is travel insurance. Now, this is a must, and some operators do include some travel insurance. I don't know of any operator that includes comprehensive travel insurance, which is evacuation, medical, trip delay, luggage, all of that. But some of them, so check with whomever your operator is, do supply some of your travel insurance. And actually, back to flights, there are some operators that provide a charter flight for that last leg. So either from Santiago to Punta Arenas or from Buenos Aires to Ushuaia. But for travel insurance, at minimum, you're required to have evacuation and medical travel to go to Antarctica. Well, you're really only required to have evacuation, but my advice, don't get evacuation without medical, because they can evacuate you, but you're going to need the medical costs most likely if you are being evacuated. But you can also add different cover for other things. Like I said, luggage, trip delay, trip interruption. And then there's some special categories called cancel for any reason and interrupt for any reason. Interrupt for any reason is very much worth looking into because it can cover in some situations interruptions that don't happen because of something that happens with you or your traveling companion, which is typically where interruption coverage kicks in, is when it happens to you or your traveling companion. But interrupt for any reason extends that coverage a bit, which can be very helpful on an Antarctic cruise when you're traveling in a big group with a bunch of other people. Now, this cost will depend on what you're covering, how much insurance you get, and your age. And also, different companies have different pricing. Some of this pricing, it varies, again, for different reasons. It's hard to always compare one company to the other because they're not exactly the same. You want to look also at how they pay out, because that's what's important. If they're difficult in getting a claim paid or anything like that. Question popped up, do we have to prove we have evacuation insurance? Yes, you will have to put your insurance information in your pre-departure documents. Now, if you're looking for travel insurance, there are a bunch of travel insurance aggregators out there for lots of different countries, where you can put your stuff in and it pops up for different companies that will offer you insurance. But if you want some one-on-one help, we have a agent that we work with. He's based in the United States, but he can write medical and evacuation policies for people outside of the United States. But for people inside the United States, he can do the comprehensive. And I'm going to put his name in the chat right now. It's Brandon, and you can reach him at TAE@travelinsurancecenter.com. All right. Moving on, it is sometimes overlooked, these sort of what I like to say other travel expenses. This is stuff like your meals when you're traveling, transportation between airports. In Buenos Aires, for example, a lot of times your flight to Ushuaia doesn't leave from the same airport that you fly into. There's an international and a domestic airport. So there you'll need sometimes transportation between those airports. Sometimes people like to bake in an extra day. So you might need extra hotels. You might do some additional sightseeing before or after your trip. And so those are all things you want to think about. Hotels in Ushuaia or in Punta Arenas the night before as well. So the question is this a talk about expedition cruising or larger Princess cruises? Do we need evacuation insurance for Princess? So this talk is mainly focused on expedition cruising, the ships that carry 500 or under passengers, with 500 or under, or 499, I should say, that those ships allow you to get off of the ship and explore Antarctica either by Zodiac or landing on one of the islands or the continent. Any ship that's over 500, like the larger Princess ships, they're sightseeing ships, basically. You'll do scenic cruising. If you are on one of those ships, I highly, highly recommend that you make sure you bring binoculars and lots of warm clothes, and you spend tons and tons of time out on deck, because the more you're outside, the more you're going to see. I do not know if for the Princess cruises, if they require evacuation insurance, but I am going to guess that they probably do. But that is something that you want to check with the cruise line directly or with the travel agent that you booked your trip with. So other than that, we've got two more quick categories. The next one is kind of lumped together: souvenirs, tips, alcohol, miscellaneous. You need to budget for the things that are generally not included in your cruise cost, like tips and alcohol. But again, some trips do include things like tips and alcohol. So you want to make sure that you figure this out. But it is always good to bring extra money for that. And sometimes with alcohol, the operator might include stuff at lunch and dinner. Drinks at lunch and dinner, but not in between, or they might include certain levels of alcohol, but not premium levels. So these are things you can figure out ahead of time, or if it's not a big deal for you, same with sodas, that's something you can just bring a budget for. Tips, again, they might be included, they might not be included. Each operator will generally have a suggested tip level, which is usually a per person per day suggestion, anywhere between $10 and $20 per day per person. But I can't, that's an estimate. It's not exact for each operator. And then some operators don't give you a suggestion, and they say it's just at your discretion. So in that case, again, that $10 to $20 range is a good range to stay in. The tips are typically split amongst the crew. Sometimes they are given also to the expedition team. Sometimes they are not. Sometimes there's a separate tip pool for the expedition team. But do be aware that the expedition team is paid a higher wage than the rest of the crew. So on the ships where they just split it amongst the crew, that is to help even out the salaries. But like I said, some ships do share it with the expedition team, and some ships have a separate cost for the separate tip pool for the expedition team. And then, of course, souvenirs and any other miscellaneous things. All right, lastly, the specialized clothing and gear. Now, you might already have things that you can use for your trip, but you might need to buy some things. I highly recommend that if you're heading down, that you kind of get out your stuff at least, 6 weeks before you're traveling, maybe even 2 months. Get out your stuff, try it on, see what you have, see what you don't have. Then you can start shopping. We have packing lists and gear lists on the bucket list to booked group. Your operator will provide you with lists as well. And then that gives you time to get the stuff, try it on, maybe return it for a different size if you need. You're not running around crazy at the end right before trying to purchase stuff. And remember, most of the operators will give you a parka to keep and loan you the boots that you need. Some operators don't include the parka or the boots, but most of them do. So make sure you know what's included before you go shopping. And then down in at least Ushuaia, and I actually haven't been to Punta Arenas in a long time, but Ushuaia is full of outdoor stores. So you can get anything and everything in Ushuaia. So if you do forget something or your luggage doesn't show up, you can go shopping in Ushuaia and completely outfit yourself. No problem. All right.